वीडियो ऑन करनी है।
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Students, today's topic of your lecture is vasculitis. As the name indicates, vasculitis. Itis means inflammation. So the inflammation of vascule, the word vascule came from vessels. So the inflammation of vessels is called vasculitis. So vasculitis is a general term for vessel wall inflammation. So the proper definition of vasculitis is a clinico-pathologic process characterized by inflammatory destruction of blood vessels that results in occlusion or destruction of the vessel and ischemia of the tissues supplied by that vessel. So this is inflammatory destruction of blood vessels, the blood vessels that have been inflamed, and the end result of it is either occlusion of the vessel or ischemia of the tissue to which the vessel is supplying, to which the vessel is supplying. In this picture, you can see this is a normal vessel in which there is a normal blood flow, and when you get a cross section, you can see a normal arterial wall and normal tone of the vessel. So when the inflammation happened to a vessel, there is, you have already studied the signs of inflammation. There are 5 signs of inflammation, which included redness, swelling. So you can see this is swelling in this vessel wall. So due to swelling, when you get a cross section, the lumen is obliterated or gets small as compared to normal lumen. So the narrowed lumen does not allow laminar blood flow through it, and eventually the total occlusion of the artery due to inflammation and swelling leads to the ineffective supply or hampered supply, blood supply to the tissue to which this artery is supplying. Now, the 2 common pathologic mechanisms of vasculitis are immune-mediated inflammation or direct invasion of vascular wall by infectious pathogen. So number 1 is immune-mediated inflammation or by a pathogen that causes the inflammation of the vessel. So what will you find in the vessel? There is infiltration of vessel wall with inflammatory cells. What are the inflammatory cells? The inflammatory cells are neutrophils. The inflammatory cells are lymphocytes, monocytes. So the inflammatory cells, plasma cells, you can see inflammatory cells in the vessel wall and leukocytoclasses and elastic membrane disruption. This is very important. Elastic membrane, as you know, that elastin is the main component of arterial wall. So elastic membrane disruption, fibrinoid necrosis of the vessel wall, ischemia, occlusion and thrombosis of the vessel wall, and aneurysm formation eventually when after inflammation the vessel wall get fibrosed and get weakened, and aneurysm can form in that area of the vessel, and eventually if aneurysm rupture there will be hemorrhage. So classification, basically there is no specific classification for vasculitis, but we can classify it as large vessel vasculitis, medium vessel vasculitis, and small vessel vasculitis. So what are large vessels? Large vessels include aorta and the great vessels such as subclavian and carotids. So the large lumen vessels are called large vessels, and the inflammation of these vessels are called large vessel vasculitis, so such as aorta and great vessels. So what symptoms a patient can present with? The symptoms include claudication, blindness, and stroke. Number 2 is medium vessel vasculitis. Medium vessel vasculitis is of arteries or vessels that are of medium-sized lumen. So these vessels still have muscular wall. So the symptoms the patient may present with is mononeuritis multiplex, that is wrist or foot drop, and mesenteric ischemia, and cutaneous ulcers. Small vessel vasculitis includes the inflammation of capillaries, arterioles, and venules is called small vessel vasculitis. As you know, these are the small vessels, capillaries, arterioles, and venules. So there may be palpable purpura, glomerulonephritis, and pulmonary hemorrhage that can happen with small vessel vasculitis. So the diseases of large vessel vasculitis are, beta, this is basically the classification. You have to memorize it. Large vessel vasculitis, the diseases of large vessel vasculitis include giant cell arteritis and Takayasu's arteritis. Medium vessel vasculitis include polyarteritis nodosa and Kawasaki's disease. Number 3 is small vessel vasculitis that include Wegener's granulomatosis, microscopic polyangiitis, Churg-Strauss syndrome, cryobulimia, and Hinox-Collin purpura, and hypersensitivity. So you have to remember large vessel vasculitis, giant cell, and Takayasu. Medium is polyarteritis nodosa and Kawasaki's. Small vessels, the important names are Wegener's, Churg-Strauss, Hinox-Collin purpura. So we will discuss them one by one. In this picture, you can see this is aorta. Aorta branches into smaller arteries. Then they again divide into more smaller arteries, then more smaller, and then arterioles. Then capillaries come, and then these capillaries join up to form venules, and venules eventually form small veins, and then small veins drain into large veins. So this aorta and large to medium arteries, the branches of aorta, if any inflammation happens in this is called large vessel vasculitis. You can see large vessel vasculitis in both of them. So the diseases are Takayasu's arteritis and giant cell arteritis. Number 2 is medium vessel vasculitis. It includes small arteries and large to medium arteries. The inflammation of this is called medium vessel vasculitis, and they include polyarteritis nodosa and Kawasaki's disease. Number 3 is small vessel vasculitis. Small vessel vasculitis include the inflammation of arteriole, capillaries, and venules. And the diseases are these we have already discussed. Now, discussing them one by one. So what is giant cell arteritis? Beta, this is very important. You should know what is giant cell arteritis. As the name indicates, giant cell, the vessel is a large vessel that is having arteritis. It is also an artery that is getting involved. So it is also called temporal arteritis. It is chronic inflammatory disorder of large to small sized arteries. As we know, this is a disorder of large sized arteries. It affects arteries in the head. As the name indicates, temporal arteries involved. This temporal artery is involved. So it affects arteries in the head, especially the temporal arteries, but also the vertebral and ophthalmic arteries can also be involved in giant cell arteritis. So remember, not only temporal, but vertebral and ophthalmic arteries can also get involved. Ophthalmic arterial involvement can lead abruptly to permanent blindness. Beta, this is hallmark of giant cell arteritis, that it can lead to abrupt blindness. So giant cell arteritis is a medical emergency requiring prompt recognition and treatment. So you can see the arteritis in temporal artery, and the patient experience severe pain in the path of the artery. The clinical features include, this is very rare before age of 50. This means that this is a disease of older people, more than 50 years of age. Symptoms may be only vague and constitutional, such as fever, fatigue, weight loss, or they may be facial pain or headache. most intense along the course of the superficial temporal artery. So the most intense pain along the course of superficial temporal artery, and it can be painful to palpation. Ocular symptoms associated with involvement of ophthalmic artery appear abruptly in about 50% of patients. That's why this is a medical emergency and you have to save the sight of the patient. Microscopic features include transmural and perivascular infiltrate of lymphocytes, histiocytes, and giant cells. Elastin stain shows fragmentation of elastic fibers in vessel wall. As we have already discussed, that what we get in arteritis or the vasculitis, we find the fragmentation of elastic fibers or the elastin membrane or elastin, the layer, and the infiltration of inflammatory cells. So in this picture, you can see a giant cell is present and none of the inflammatory infiltrate throughout the wall of the elastic. Note the inflammatory, this is the inflammatory reaction in the wall of the artery. And giant cells can also be seen. So now coming towards Takayasu's arteritis, this is also called pulseless disease. It is a rare large vessel vasculitis, usually occurs in patients younger than 50 years old. Giant cell arteritis was in older patients, more than 50 years old. And Takayasu's arteritis is in younger patients that are less than 50, that are below 50. Takayasu's arteritis usually involves aorta and its major branches and kidney. As we know, we have already studied the Takayasu and giant cell arteritis are the diseases of large vessel arteritis. So Takayasu arteritis involves aorta and its major branches as well as kidney. Pathophysiology is that genetic predisposition plus environmental factors play a major part in Takayasu's arteritis. So virus or bacteria via molecular mimicry mechanism leads to autoimmune response. What does this sentence mean? That any viral or bacterial infection happened to a person and now the immune system have made antibodies against these pathogens. And now the antibodies formed mimic any antigens in the body mimic those bacteria or viral sites of attachment, and the antibodies are now attacking the whole body, the own body. So what happens? The antibodies attack by a molecular mimicry mechanism that lead to autoimmune response. Autoimmune response due to bacteria and virus. Crossly, there is vascular sclerosis. Sclerosis, wherever there is sclerosis, there is hardening of the vessel. You should think about the hardening of the vessel. The vessel become rigid. Non-specific scarring, ill-defined white mass-like lesions can be seen. As in this picture, you can see there is vascular sclerosis, non-specific scarring, and ill-defined white mass-like lesions. You can see the white mass. Microscopically, granulomatous vasculitis with mixed inflammatory infiltrate, including giant cells, with necrosis, destruction of elastic lamina, and features of decanalization. As you can see in this picture, these are giant cells and the granulomatous inflammation and inflammatory. You can see the inflammatory reaction in this artery. Now, polyarteritis nodosa. Polyarteritis nodosa is the inflammation of medium-sized vessels. So the medium-sized vessels when get inflamed is called polyarteritis nodosa. So vasculitis it is a vasculitis of unknown etiology that affects muscular arteries at branching points. It produces lesions of varying stages of evolution and also cause aneurysm. Usually affects kidneys in 80% of cases and GI tract. Microscopic features include necrotizing vasculitis, fibrinoid necrosis, and neutrophilic infiltration of vessel wall, often with thrombosis. later have mononuclear infiltrate and fibrosis of media. Now in this picture you can see there is fibrinoid necrosis of the vessel wall. You can see the fibrinoid necrosis. And the lymphocytic and plasma cell and macrophage infiltration throughout the vessel wall. Kawasaki's disease. Beta, it is also called mucocutaneous lymph node syndrome. It is a febrile disorder of unknown etiology, usually affecting children. So this is important that Kawasaki is more pronounced in children. Fever, pharyngitis, and conjunctivitis, erythematous skin rashes, cervical adenopathy, also arthritis, coronary arteritis with persistent damage, which may cause death. So the children present with fever, pharyngitis, conjunctivitis. You can see mucocutaneous, as the name indicates, mucocutaneous lymph node syndrome. So the mucocutaneous surfaces are involved. Conjunctivitis, erythematous skin rashes, as you can see in this picture, cervical adenopathy, arthritis, coronary arteritis with persistent damage, and eventually this can lead to death. Microscopically, you find fibrin thrombin in small vessels with patchy infarcts. And difference from polyarteritis nodosa is that Kawasaki has more mural edema and infiltrating monocytes and less fibrinoid necrosis. This means that polyarteritis nodosa has less fibrinoid, has more fibrinoid necrosis as compared to Kawasaki disease. And in Kawasaki, there is more infiltrating monocytes. Wegener's granulomatosis. So what is this? This is now called granulomatosis with polyangiitis. This is a new name for Wegener's granulomatosis. You should know this. Granulomatosis with polyangiitis. It is a rare autoimmune disease of unknown etiology with triad. The triad include necrotizing granulomatous and inflammation of upper respiratory tract or lungs. So in lungs and respiratory tract, you can have necrotizing granulomatous inflammation. You can also get necrotizing pauciimmune vasculitis of small to medium-sized vessels in lungs, upper airway, and other sites. And number 3 among the triad is focal necrotizing glomerulonephritis. So one is the 2 points are from respiratory system, and the third point is from kidneys, necrotizing glomerulonephritis. So microscopically, what will you find? On light microscopy, you will find fresh segmental necrotizing lesions. You can see these are the necrotizing lesions with bright red fibrin deposition. This is the fibrin deposition after necrotizing lesion. Etiology. It is the mostly kidney and lungs with epidemiology. Mostly kidney and lungs with granulomas are seen. Adults in their 4th and 5th decades are mostly affected, and initially with respiratory symptoms and then renal insufficiency prevails. First there are respiratory symptoms and then renal insufficiency comes in. The differential diagnosis includes sarcoidosis, tuberculosis, and Church-Strauss syndrome. Now, what is Church-Strauss syndrome? This is also the inflammation of small vessel vasculitis. So this is systemic. Better remember, Church-Strauss syndrome is systemic, small to medium vessel, eosinophilic rich, and granulomatous vasculitis. So things to remember is that this is systemic and eosinophil rich granulomatous vasculitis. Diagnosis is clinically by the presence of asthma, allergic rhinitis, and lung infiltrates. Number 2, blood eosinophilia is found and it exceeds 1500 per cubic millimeters. Okay. Number 3 is evidence of vasculitis involving 2 or more organs. Now, in this picture, you can see a skin biopsy showing the accumulation of extravascular eosinophilic infiltrates. You can see the eosinophilic infiltrates are seen. Bronchoalveolar lavage fluid showing a considerable quantity of eosinophils on Giemsa staining. These are all used in bronchoalveolar lavage. So thing to remember is this is eosinophil-rich granulomatous vasculitis, and blood eosinophilia is also present. And whenever there are eosinophils, your mind says that there should be asthma or allergic rhinitis along with this. So it is a multi-system disease with cutaneous involvement, that is palpable purpura, gastrointestinal tract bleeding, renal disease, and myocardial involvement may give rise to myocardiopathy. So this is a multi-system disease involving multiple systems such as skin, GI tract, renal, and heart. It is considered an idiopathic condition, but the exposure to allergens or drugs can also cause Church-Strauss syndrome. On pathophysiology, there is immune dysregulation, eosinophilic infiltrate, how they get activated Th2 cells release cytokines. These cytokines promote bringing of eosinophils from the bloodstream into tissue. And activated eosinophils secrete granules contain eosinophil basic protein and eosinophil derived neurotoxin that damage the tissue. So basically this is immune dysregulation, which leads the activation of Th2 cells. The activated Th2 cells release cytokines. Cytokines recruited eosinophils, and eosinophils in the bloodstream, they came into the tissue. And activated eosinophils release eosinophilic granules from the eosinophilic granules and cause local tissue damage. So there is also ANCA-induced endothelial damage. On microscopy, you will find prominent eosinophilic infiltrate, granulomatous reaction around necrotic foci with readily arranged histiocytes and palisading giant cells near small arteries or arterioles. So the basic thing you need to remember is eosinophilic infiltrate. Number 2 is granulomatous reaction around necrotic foci with histiocytes and giant cells. There may have fibrin-rich edema, lymphocytes, sarcoid-like granulomas, focal fibrosis, and eosinophilic microabscesses. So in microscopically, the minimum things you need to remember is eosinophilic infiltrate and granulomatous reaction, which include histiocytes and giant cells. The prognosis overall 5-year survival rate is 97%. Inositol purpura. Beta, this is most common systemic vasculitis in children. Remember, most common systemic vasculitis in children. And this is the disease of small vessel arteries. Small arteries. Purpuric skin lesions on extensor arms and legs and buttocks. As you can see, this is inositol purpura. So also there may be abdominal pain, vomiting, GI bleeding, arthralgias, hematuria, proteinuria, and nephrotic syndrome. As it is systemic vasculitis, so many systems are involved, such as you can see, gastrointestinal tract, joints, and kidneys are involved, can be involved. And the higher rate of renal involvement in children is seen. It is related to IgA nephropathy due to elevated serum IgA and circulating immune complexes with IgA. So the important thing you need to memorize in inositol purpura is elevated levels of IgA, renal involvement in children. In this picture, you can see inflammation of glomerular capillaries and IgA deposits in glomerulus viewed by microfluorescence microscopy. These bright colored are IgA deposits. In skin vasculitis, inflammation of small vessels in the skin can be seen. The small vessels are inflamed, and IgA deposits in small vessels in the skin viewed by immunofluorescence microscopy. Leukocytoclastic vasculitis of small vessels due to deposition of IgA immune complexes and diffuse proliferation of mesangial cells in matrix without significant involvement of capillary wall or lumina. So basically, the IgA immune complexes are depositing which are causing small vessel vasculitis. Behçet's disease. It is a small to medium vessel arteritis. There is neutrophilic vasculitis that classically present as a triad of recurrent oral aphthous ulcers, genital ulcers, and uveitis. So this is the triad: aphthous ulcers, genital ulcers, and uveitis in Behçet's disease. Microscopically superficial and deep perivascular infiltration of lymphocytes and neutrophils are seen. Now, thromboangiitis obliterans, which is also called Berger's disease. This disease affects small to medium-sized arteries and veins of upper and lower extremities. It is characterized by thrombosis and recanalization of the affected vessels. So the etiology is unknown, but use or exposure of tobacco is central to the initiation and progression of the disease. As you can see, we have studied that it involves upper and lower extremities. So clinically, early manifestations include cold-induced Raynaud's phenomena, leg pain induced by exercise that is relieved on onset. This is called intermittent claudication. Intermittent claudication is leg pain induced by exercise but relieved on rest. Instep foot pain induced by exercise, that is instep claudication, and superficial nodular phlebitis. Chronic extremity ulcerations develop, progressing over time to frank gangrene, as you can see in this picture, the gangrene. So the chronic extremity ulcerations, they progress to form frank gangrene. Beta infectious vasculitis. This is a secondary cause of vasculitis in which the arteries arteritis can be caused by direct invasion of infectious agents such as bacteria. That includes Pseudomonas. Better remember this: Pseudomonas can cause infectious vasculitis. It is being the classic example, or fungi, in particular Aspergillus and mucor species. They can cause vasculitis. Vascular invasion can be part of a localized tissue infection, for example, bacterial pneumonia or adjacent to abscess. And vascular infections can weaken arterial wall and culminate in mycotic aneurysms. So we have discussed in the previous lecture what aneurysms are and how aneurysms develop by the weakening of the arterial wall. So the vascular infections can weaken the arterial wall and aneurysms can develop in the weakened area of the arterial wall, or can induce thrombosis and infarction. So this is all for today. I hope you all understood what vasculitis is. Thank you so much. Allah.